Tao Meeting Archives, April 24th, 2016. The Tao of Love by Ed Monaghan.
So as usual, we're going to begin with the meeting beginning ritual. Let's do it together. 起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加空位点传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
As you see on the screen, what I have up is the Tao of Love. And as I pondered what topic to discuss at today's meeting, that seemed to be most prevalent on my mind. And the reason for that is because I have been, as I typically do, reading teachings from a variety of different traditions, and I try to practice these things in my life as best I can. I've particularly been engaging in conversation and discourse and have been given teachings from the Christian community as of late. And one particular pastor who is a friend of mine and one of the students at our facility has been very kind in offering to meet with me on a weekly basis and go through the Abrahamic teachings. And to which I've been very grateful. As I've mentioned a couple of times with you guys, that's never been a specialization and or field of study of mine, although I grew up Christian. And as I've continued to examine this and receive the teachings, one of the topics that I have, one of the things that resonated so much with me with the Tao is how open it is. And by open, I mean that this source, the Tao, is a unification. It's something from which all things came, that encompasses all things. And that the Tao, these different traditions that we follow are emanations, all of essentially the same thing. And there are different characteristics within these frameworks of belief, these belief systems, that somewhat contradict one another. There are a great many teachings that are very much the same, but there are still some substantial differences. And I personally do not take issue with many of the differences. Many of the differences I personally ascribe to the human being, to our ego, which have interpreted these this oneness, this unity that we all experience, perhaps in different ways, and somehow that gets twisted around by with the best of intentions, by somehow kind of fitting in what we want to somehow express as a universal truth. Now, who am I to know what a universal truth is and what is not? And one of the teachings that I received recently was that we have to be careful not to, if we're talking about God, make God adhere to what we want him to be, but actually look at what God is. And how do we know what that is? Well, in the Christian faith, it has to do with what's handed down in the Bible. Now, my argument has always been that, and I think there are many others who perhaps share this opinion, that anything that is written was written by people. And people often either make mistakes, even in oral traditions. And if you look at the Pali Canon out of Buddhism, this is a written representation of the Buddha Gautama's words, but this was an oral tradition passed down. So what we have written was actually, codified a good period of time after the historical Buddha had left this plane of existence. So could there be a few things? I mean, were people very, very careful in those time periods to memorize specifically what these teachings were? Yes, far more so than now. And I think there's plenty of historical documentation to back that assertion. But could there be mistakes? If I say something now, I mean, we all know the game of telephone, right? I say something, it's whispered in somebody's ear as they go around the circle. By the time it gets back to you, it's something completely different than you originally said. So if I say something now, everybody within earshot of what I'm saying hears it. I die tomorrow. Not that anything I say would be worth passing on for 100 years, but let's just say it is. And everybody, the 20-some-odd people listening to this meeting say, wow, what that guy said, that's really noteworthy. We should remember that. But we don't write things down. We're going to tell it through oral tradition. And you pass that on to your kids, who passes it on to their kids. And let's say 100 years down the line, those kids decide, hey, we should really write this down so that it's something that's accurate for generations to follow. Would there be mistakes? I would theorize that it's pretty likely that there may be a few mistakes or misinterpretations, even though the intent was pure. So if we follow the logic of the inspired word of God, then God, or the Tao, would see to it that whatever is expressed is exactly as it should be. So there's an argument that says that that's the case as well. This may be true. I would assert, in the way that I've always viewed things, is that a lot of times there's a reason why there's an expression, you miss the forest for the trees. So meaning that I look at one piece so hard that I forget to see the overall picture. And what's made sense always to me is to try to step back and take an overview. And if I look at teachings from around the world, and there are commonalities in these teachings, very clear consistencies, that I think I can probably safely say that there's a thread of truth that moves through all of this, and there may be something guiding that that's beyond the scope of human interpretation. So one of the most vital and important parts of all traditions are the teachings on love. So what I've done is I've just culled a few of these, and I apologize because I really didn't take time, because I've been so slammed with everything, to cite more than 3 examples. But I just pulled 3 quickly so that we could take a look at those, because I think that they're particularly relevant. So if we look at Christianity, and these are I just pulled 2 quotes, each belief system, so that we can have a look at them. So in Christianity, the Gospel of John, one that I examined this morning, that was actually given out in church that I attended. I give you a new commandment, love one another, just as I have loved you. So this is something relevant because when Jesus created this new movement, this was to be a new covenant. So the covenant between the Jewish people and God had to do with a whole series of very explicit rules, 360 some odd, I think. I'm afraid I'm not anyone who's well acquainted with Judaism beyond just sort of generalized knowledge, but there are an enormous number of these very specific rules. And then this teacher, Jesus, came into the world, and the primary teaching was to love one another just as I have loved you. In 1 Corinthians, I really like this quote. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. So, this to me kind of gets to the core of the issue. With this presence, this love, it does not fade away. It always will be. So if we have teachings, written texts, whatever they may be, these things come and go. But this essence, this core, continues throughout. And I think if we really look at these teachings and really see how this permeates our beings, how we know this in our hearts when we feel it, that this is a universal truth. So this is from the Self-Realization Fellowship. This is Paramahansa Yogananda, who essentially merged the teachings of Sanatana or Hinduism with Christianity. It says, to love those that love you is easy. To love those that love you is not so simple. That love you not is so simple. If you want to change anyone, set a better example. Show more kindness, more understanding, more love. That has a sure effect. To those who are not kind, show kindness. To those who are mean, show bigness of heart. Second quote. God's love is the supreme love. There is no love greater than that. The love that is born of instinct has its defects because it is compelled. That is why I sang to God as Divine Mother, in this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. Only the divine love of great ones is born of wisdom. That love is infinitely greater than a parental or any other form of human love. Jesus gave up his life for the world. So this inspired love, more than sexual love, more than we feel for one another, but there is an essence. And if you look at the instances of those, speaking of death, my mom died last year about this time. When we look at those who have passed over and had the near-death experiences, almost universally when they come back, they said that there is this overwhelming sense of pure love, bliss that they've never experienced before, even in the greatest love that they experience as humans in their life. This is what I've experienced in meditative states upon occasion, and I would say that there is a great deal of validity to this assertion that Paramahansa Yogananda has placed forth. the Bhagavad Gita. Still your mind in me, still yourself in me, and without a doubt you shall be united with me, Lord of love, dwelling in your heart. That one I love who is incapable of ill will and returns love for hatred, living beyond the reach of I and mine, and of pain and pleasure, full of mercy, contented, self-controlled, with all his heart and all his mind given to me. With such a one, I am in love. Gautama Buddha, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. A lot of us have problems with that, loving ourselves. In the end, these things matter most. How well did you love? How fully did you live? How deeply did you let go? Now, again, these are quick quotes that I searched. I have the Pali Canon sitting next to me, but I had about a half hour to prep for this talk, so I just did an internet search on these quotes. So if any of these are misquotes, I apologize. But I think they kind of get to the point. And again, you know, what we see is this manifestation of a personification of God, the Tao. And we see the non-personified essence that is the Tao. And do human characteristics make a difference? Is that a manifestation of the Tao? Well, because we're human, I guess so, because that which is created us. So are there manifestations of that within this? Perhaps there are. But is it on a broader, grander scale? I would suspect yes. And we're these little biological organisms that are somehow sort of tripping through life, trying to figure out what our purpose is. And, you know, this is largely how I occupy my days, is in contemplation of these questions. And I love that Derek writes the books and all of the wisdom of the Tao on wisdom, on happiness, on peace. And with every little stone that's turned, there's another revelation that's connecting these dots. You know, so the Japanese call satori, these little moments of enlightenment that we connect a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So it's like a black sheet of paper that we poke holes in with a light behind it. The more holes we poke, the more that light shines through and the more we connect these dots. So that seems to be the journey of life, is using this as a catalyst for growth and being able to embrace these teachings from a variety of perspectives. And where I get hung up is exclusivity, you know, because this is something that I encounter in teachings from around the world with, well, if you don't see it this way, I'm afraid God's going to shut you out because, you know, it's been revealed in this way and you don't get to choose. That's how it is. And, you know, I take issue with that. I take issue with the fact that somebody that I happen to have a preference for sexually somehow makes me a bad person, and that I'm not going to be allowed to become a part of that great unity. That somehow, that if you know, I perform the wrong ritual, that suddenly I'm excluded, and as a member of this little point of light, that somehow it's snuffed out because I didn't say the right phrase, or I didn't make the right movement, or whatever it may be. I can't believe that it just doesn't resonate, that this grand essence from which we all came would be that narrow in scope. So this is my topic for today. My job for the week is to live out these teachings, because my wife was just in here talking to me about conditional and unconditional love. And do I have conditions? Yeah, you bet I do. There's no doubt about that. And that's for me to work on, for me to reach out, get out of my comfort zone, and reach out to those that I feel as though I'm annoyed, frustrated, and angered with, which is the essence of all of these teachings. It's not to lay back and do the stuff that's easy. It's easy to love somebody that's being nice to me, not so easy to do the same for someone and show the action of love for someone with whom I'm upset and angered. So I hope that resonates with some of you guys and makes sense to you, and I'll be interested to see how that fits in with Derek's topic for the day.
Ed, it makes a great deal of sense to me, and the quotes that you have in your presentation I found to be deeply moving. They all seem to be pointing to the pure essence of the Tao. Later on, as I get into chapter 55 of the Tao Te Ching today, one point that it'll make is that when we had this childlike state of mind, we were closer and we were in touch with this pure essence. And so one of the things that we do, that we focus on, is to return to that childlike state where we can be in touch with the joy of this love at all times.
Yeah.
Also, the quotes from Buddhism I found to be very interesting as well, because the truth of it seems to be very profound, very simple, and yet carries a part of it that I think will be a great challenge for many of us, when it talks about how the important thing is to love deeply, and to let go completely. That I think is so incredibly profound, and not at all easy to put into practice, only because in the way we typically are as human beings, we tend to think about loving something as a kind of possession. So to love something more deeply, more strongly, is to hold on to something ever more tightly. Therefore, that love at that level seems to be as far as it can possibly be from detachment, from letting go. And yet, when you transcend that level to the ultimate love, that detachment, that letting go, has to be very much part of the essence, not because you no longer care, but I think because you care at that supreme ultimate level. So this is what I aspire to understand.
That's very well said, Eric. The scope of that love, that scope of that understanding, is so far broader than the example that I cited to the gentleman, the pastor that I was speaking with, is that I can't possibly believe that God, or this grand essence, would be so narrow in scope as to be that concerned over what hole I put my little Twinkie in. I just don't see that as being of massive relevance when it comes to the grand scheme of things.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛场，持下身鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持下部位点唇，11鞠躬，结班一鞠躬。Okay, everybody, we are done.
Join the Tao meeting live to participate in the questions and commentary. For more information, go to http://taoism.net/Tao/connect-online.